What's your initial reaction to this?
Well, this is an extraordinary episode. It's unprecedented in the abduction of a foreign leader when the situation is unprovoked. I mean, we can go back to 1989 and the invasion of Panama, but that was as a result and response to attacks on American military personnel in Panama. This comes without any provocation. So it's difficult to see how it's justified in international law. So many people will be concerned about the precedent that it sets in terms of the violation of international law, the violation of sovereignty, the violation of the principle of non-intervention. And it's also, of course, uncertain as to what happens now, because although you've removed the leader, you haven't removed the regime. So there's a huge uncertainty as to whether it's achieved its objectives. It's unclear what those objectives were, other than perhaps the need to demonstrate a use of force and the need to act against Maduro. But as I say, what happens in Venezuela thereafter, when his regime is still intact, even though him and his wife have been abducted, is unclear. So it's unclear. It creates instability in Venezuela. It creates instability in the international system if you have violations of international law by the power that has historically been the upholder of international law. And of course, actually, this will be controversial hugely within the US because Trump got elected saying that he was against the forever wars, against foreign intervention, and here we have him in an unprovoked way attacking a country with a huge amount of military force, taking life without a clear justification as to why that happened.
So how do you think the international community will react to this?
I think actually what we'll see is a whole variety of condemnations of this. It'll be interesting to see at the United Nations how that's passed, because for many European nations, they will privately be horrified at this action, and yet will be trying to find a form of words that doesn't break relations with Washington, because of the need to have Washington engaged in European security, and indeed for fear of revenge from Trump, which is entirely capable of doing, as we've seen, on a whole variety of ways. But the precedent here is a concern. If Trump can abduct, kidnap effectively a head of state, what's to stop Putin trying to do that with Zelensky, or a whole variety of other occasions, other examples around the world where people don't like their neighbors and they abduct them and put them on trial and on show trials. So the whole fabric of international law is the principle of sovereignty and non-intervention, and that's been violated today without good reason, it seems.
Where do we go from here? Will Maduro likely face a trial in the United States?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that's what we'll see. We'll see a performative aspect of him being put on trial in New York and sent to a prison in the US on drug charges. And that may be enough for the Trump administration in terms of actually the performative way in which he does politics. Look, I identified a problem, I have solved the problem. But it doesn't solve the problem of the regime in Caracas. It actually creates more problems there, more instability there. It doesn't achieve his objectives of actually getting compensation for the nationalization of American assets in the 1970s, which is one of the motivations for him involved. It doesn't address the alleged drug problem, but of course, it was never really about drugs. That was just a justification that Trump used. Most drugs come from Mexico in the form of fentanyl, not from cocaine from Venezuela, which is a tiny proportion of the drugs coming to America. So there may just be a performative political aspect to this, but it creates huge problems in its wake in terms of actually the ramifications in US politics, in Venezuelan politics, and in international politics more broadly.
What's next for the government in Venezuela now that their leader has been captured?
Well, I mean, I suppose that the Trump administration will be hoping that the vice president takes a different view to that of the outgoing president, as it were, and seeks to negotiate with the United States. But it's unclear whether they can do that in terms of the demands that the Americans are putting on them, that they are paid billions of dollars in reparations for the nationalization of oil assets, I say, going back to the 1970s. And indeed, the Maduro government was even talking about, well, if you're concerned about drugs, let's talk about drugs. But the Americans wouldn't talk to him. So it's unclear, really, what happens in terms of the relationship between Venezuela and the United States. It's unclear in terms of the domestic politics in Venezuela. Certainly, if you listen to the military chief there, he's up for a fight. He is actually willing to actually rally around the flag and get his country ready to actually try and repel the invading forces. So it's really a time of uncertainty in Venezuelan politics and instability created by this action.